Welcome to another episode of the Anonymous Embarrassers podcast. This week we have Stonk Man to my left. We had trouble getting him in here. He kept exiting the room. I kept telling him, hello, hello, hello. He wouldn't answer. And, finally we got the technical difficulties under control and we have Stonk Man here. How are you doing, Stonk Man?
Pretty good. And to my right, we have God, the homie, and he's COVID free, everyone. So, COVID free, COVID free.
Well,
COVID man. It's a COVID free zone. Very good, very good.
you know who's also COVID free?
Anthony Flip Flop Fauci.
We got Anthony Fauci, the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. He's also COVID free after conducting COVID earlier in the week. Anthony Fauci, if you don't know him, he's basically one of the most respected top infectious disease experts in the country. Highly, highly respected. And he's 81 years old, and he was experiencing basically these COVID virus symptoms on June the 14th, and he tested positive a day later. The day after testing positive, right, he took an antiviral drug, Paxlovid. And, as you know, Anthony Fauci is vaccinated. He's a huge proponent of vaccinations, as am I. And, he had one of the quickest recoveries I've ever seen in my life. And, why he had one of the quickest recoveries? It's because he's vaccinated. And if he wasn't vaccinated, he probably would have ended up in the hospital. And it would have been a totally different situation. So I have to encourage everybody in this world to get vaccinated. Right? And mindset is another huge thing that people need to understand. They need to have a positive mindset. They need to stop thinking about COVID as this end-all be-all. They think COVID is like Ebola and all this other shit. They have to calm down with their COVID fear and their fear-mongering. And, Anthony Fauci, he's emphasizing the protection. He emphasizes the protection of vaccines. And, sooner or later, we're going to be offering these vaccines to children as young as 6 months, which is a very, very good thing. We need to basically vaccinate these children out of the womb. Maybe even we need to consider vaccinating these children right before they even get out of the womb. We should be injecting shots to the mother's stomach, and we should be basically exposing them to these vaccines before they're even born. I think that's a good idea. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I totally agree. And you sent me this great article that I read, and it was on medium.com. That's medium.com, medium.com for those listening. And the article is called "Is Sickness a Mindset?" And the thumbnail of the article is "You Become What You Think." And I think that Anthony Fauci thinks that he's a big, strong guy, and he's very tall and doesn't look like a Keebler elf, and that's how he was able to beat COVID pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of surprising, but when you look at it, he was vaccinated. That's why he beat it so quickly. On the other hand, right, let's be moving away from vaccinations. We had somebody else get injured recently. Also, I saw like basically Joe Biden. He was running around like he thought he was in the Tour of France or something like that. Like he was like that guy Armstrong, Louis Armstrong. I don't know what the fuck he was doing, but he was speeding
You just called
rapidly
him
on a
Louis
bicycle.
Armstrong? You mean fucking Lance Armstrong? Louis Armstrong was the saxophone player. You know the song "It's a Wonderful World"? That's fucking Louis Armstrong, you fuck.
All right. So anyway, right.
Yo, that's
Louis
hilarious. Louis Armstrong
Armstrong
from the
Jr.
Tour de France.
was coming down, like he was coming down the Tour de France, and right it was a crowd of people. It was a very crowded street. I don't know where the Secret Service was during all this. It seemed like Mr. Biden was all by himself, and he was riding that bicycle, right? And the way his leg was in the rower thing, right? He got tripped up and he fell. After he came to a complete stop, he fell and he tumbled over. It was like a willow tree tumbling over after withering away and not having any water. So I was very surprised in that. And then, it seemed like he jumped back up and he said, I'm okay. So I'm just wondering, right? Whoever put this together, like his PR team, they were trying to put together like, oh, look at Joe Biden. he's healthy. He rides bicycles and everything like that. They were trying to prop him up like as he's healthy because everyone says he has dementia and all these other things and Alzheimer's and such. This is a total backfire from his PR team. They thought he was going to do like, oh, look at him. He's healthy. He's a nice guy. And then he fell over like a fucking clown.
Yeah, the whole thing with that is it was obviously a stage like type of photo op or like a staged fucking, like press release that they were trying to get out, and obviously it worked against them. That was the whole thing, right? And he had like, I don't know, did you see the video of it? It was fucking hilarious, number one. Number two, he was rolling with like a fucking squad of like old motherfuckers. So I'm surprised there weren't, that there wasn't like some type of pileup. Yeah, it just seemed like he never learned how to stop on a bike. It's like pretty simple, like where the handlebars are in a bike. You just like kind of squeeze a little and then you're able to stop the bike. But if you squeeze on the left too much, you'll stop the front wheel of the bike and then you'll flip over the handlebars. And then if you stop the back, you won't get enough traction to stop the bike entirely. So you got to kind of press both at the same time. At the same time, you press both of the brakes on the handlebars down. And then the other thing is that on some of the bikes that are more modern but aren't like kind of mountain bikes or speed bikes, there's a thing where if your pedals are going, you could like kind of hit them counterclockwise, I guess is what it would be, and you could brake that way too. Like I had an old bike where I was able to do that. I think it was like a Rhino or something, but it was more of like a BMX type of bike. It had like pegs and shit on it, which were cool because then you could have someone stand on the front of the bike or stand on the back of the bike, which was dope. And then the whole thing is that you kind of just like push the pedals, like I said, counterclockwise, and you could brake that way too. But I don't think Biden's like that advanced to like think to do that. I actually have a hard time believing like that he even knows where the fuck he is sometimes. I mean, sometimes, I guess really all the time. So that was funny to see. That was such a fucking crazy, oh my God, just a crazy nightmare. And there's been a lot of other old people kind of going around like deciding things lately, right? And now we're seeing that with the Supreme Court, which, they're
Wait,
kind of notorious for having a bunch
Have a
of,
bell? Did
yep.
Biden have a bell on that bike?
Oh,
Was
I
there
don't
a
know.
bell?
I don't know. It's a good question.
Oh, because he could have rang for help before he was going to fall. I don't know if he had a bell or not.
Well, you know what it was? He was actually riding the bike fine, and then he just didn't know how to stop, and he just like ate shit right in front of the crowd, like staging the pictures or whatever. Like he didn't stop the bike properly. That's all it was. He didn't like brake the right way. But like I said, speaking of old people that are just fucking dumb, that are dumb. Speaking of old people that are just kind of like controlling things and making decisions on behalf of people and stuff like that. There was that whole thing with like the Supreme Court, right, where they've been really busy lately. Where in the case of Bayer, like so Bayer merged, they were a German and are a German pharmaceutical company, right? So they own Monsanto, and the whole thing with them is that they kind of they had a huge problem with Roundup. So people use this fucking, weed sprayer Roundup. It's sold in Home Depot and Lowe's and any sort of like hardware store. But the problem with the Roundup is that when you fucking spray the weeds, obviously there's fucking chemicals in it. And it turns out that you can get cancer from it, as proven in court, by a gentleman who was actively spraying it in his yard and in his driveway to kill weeds that were growing in. And he developed some type of like severe fucking life threatening cancer. And, Bear, they were getting the shit suit out of him. And then they ended up paying this guy out. And I think he got like tens of millions of dollars or some fucking crazy amount of money. And Bear kind of positioned to the Supreme Court. They were like, hey, can we like end the lawsuits? Like they were kind of looking to get out of like, being fucking sued into oblivion. And the Supreme Court was just like, nope, and just fucking shot down any sort of rebuttal that they had for these lawsuits. So they're going to continue to get sued. And to be honest, I don't feel bad at all because I think that they're a pretty lousy company, and I think Monsanto's a pretty lousy company too. Did you know this? I don't know if you did, but like Monsanto, they like Agent Orange, which was used in like Vietnam.
No, I don't know what that is.
Agent Orange is like napalm. That like how they would do like napalm strikes in Vietnam and just like burn a fucking village to the ground.
Not really, no. I
Okay,
don't really know too much about it.
well, that's like all military shit. So like napalm is basically just like this like chemical that they would create, and it would like combust immediately on impact, and basically it was like you were dropping like fire on people, right? So the whole thing with Agent Orange is that it was like a, you know, like a code name, like a military code name for like napalm. So Monsanto actually like created napalm, and it's like pretty scary because there are like children that are born, and they're called like Agent Orange babies, and they're like all fucked up and like deformed and shit from it because of the chemicals, and like, you know, getting hit with like fucking Agent Orange like would, you know, kind of destroy any semblance of like normalcy for their like endocrine system or like any kind of like development. So that was like kind of scary. So fuck Monsanto, honestly, they're fucking scumbags. And then they also make like a lot of genetically modified like crops, but people kind of, I mean, I don't think there's a problem with GMOs, but I think that the main issue is with Monsanto, like they clearly didn't give a fuck to make Roundup safe enough for people, and then people are spraying it in their lawns and spraying it in their yard, and obviously people kind of, you know, they hang out in their yard, or like they play in, or kids play in the yard, and if they could get cancer or something from the spray, then it's like, you know, why would you trust them with anything else type of thing, especially when it comes to food? So it's just kind of that whole argument, but I see where people are coming from and I see the problems with it. So yeah, I mean, what do you think? Do you think that this company should be allowed to continually get sued, even if it means that they're going to possibly file bankruptcy? Or do you fall more in line that, you know, they should kind of have an out here, especially because there was like this landmark ruling where someone won a lot of money and was awarded a lot of money for that whole thing of developing cancer?
Why don't they put on their bottle while using, wear a mask or wear a protectant like they do with other products?
Yeah, they could have very easily have put like some type of legal clause or some shit on there that basically prevents them from being liable, I would think, right? Like if you have a good enough legal team, if you're like a multi-billion-dollar company, you just hire a bunch of really good lawyers to come up with some fucking statement that kind of absolves you of any sort of, you know, liability, right?
Yeah, exactly. They should just put on the bottle like, may cause cancer while using, wear a mask. This blah 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 blah. But they tried to do the same thing with baby powder and everything too. They tried to get people say, "Oh, baby powder causes cancer." That's your problem. You want to use it, you use it. You don't want to use it, then don't use it. Oh no, it was the baby powder was causing this guy to develop breast, and then
I
he got made
remember
fun of.
this conversation when this happened. It was Johnson and Johnson, and I remember when this happened because this was a couple of years ago, and it was in the Wall Street Journal. And me and you, we were hanging out and we were talking about this. Maybe you remember this conversation. I remember where we were when we had this conversation, and it was one of the funniest things because we were hanging out in person and talking about this, and you were just like, if I grew breast or whatever from the baby powder and I sued them and I won like $20 million, you're like, I would just smack the fuck out of everyone with my like overgrown like breast. And I was like, would you spend any money to like get it fixed or whatever, like cosmetic surgery? And you were like, no. Remember that?
But yeah, that would be like that's like a that would be like a token of my award. I'd be like, bouncing it all around, showing the people what got me my money.
It's fucking hilarious. Oh
There
man,
was
gotta love it.
yeah, the conservatives though, the conservatives have, they've been having a big week with the Supreme Court. They won two landmark decisions this week. The first one with the guns in New York. They tried to stop people from having concealed carry weapons in New York. That was turned down by the Supreme Court, and they said that, stopping people from having concealed carry basically it infringes on people's
It's
rights to the
unconstitutional,
Second
is
Amendment.
what, you know,
Yeah,
what they said. Yeah.
right, unconstitutional. Then you had the other one, the liberals. This is the one they're really pissed about. They're going around, they're bouncing around, protesting and shit about the abortions. They said that it's up to the states to decide about the abortions, and I'm kind of happy about both these decisions. I think they're the right decisions, but the abortion one is a hot topic. For decades, since like the 70s, people have been fighting about abortion, whether or not it should be legalized or not, and such. But you got to look at the context, and I think there's like some middle ground here where people can come to and decide what's the actual right decision, instead of arguing about, like, should abortion be legal or not. What they should look to is they should be looking to technology and exogenesis. You see this with premature babies, how they're able to house the baby outside the womb for maybe like 3-4 months up until time in their pregnancy. If they're able to basically advance this technology from conception, then basically everybody could be happy. You could have women's bodies' rights be protected, and you could stop basically the unborn from being killed. So you basically make both sides happy. And you see this in Australia. They're developing this exogenesis technology, and they even say uh, before 2140 that over 40% of births are going to be through exogenesis instead of through natural born pregnancies.
So what is that? I've never heard of that before. What the fuck is
So you know how
exogenesis?
like a
It's like an
premature baby.
incubator, kind of.
Exactly, it's like an incubator. So like premature babies, they're put in this like like this fake stimulated pregnancy like environment. But the problem is right now, actually, it only you can only have like exogenesis or these environments. The baby only survives maybe 3-4 months. So you have to be like 5 months into the pregnancy for the baby to even have a chance of survival. But if they're able to develop this technology even more and more and more, and get this from the point of conception, then it would basically be a huge advancement. And then you know we could basically solve this problem. And I think that would be like a reasonable solution. Both sides would be happy because you're not killing life, and then women's rights are being protected. I think that's kind of like the only solution to this problem, where you're going to get basically almost 100% approval. I can't see most people disagreeing with a solution like that has technology. Instead of depending on the government to solve this problem, they should be looking towards the technology.
Yeah, that's another really good point too, is like when you think about it, right? Like a lot of companies will offer like maternal leave, but it won't be as it won't be for like a long period of time. So if you use a system like you're describing, these exogenesis systems, then it actually allows women to like go back into the workforce and not have to give up like, months or possibly even weeks of their careers,
Right, and to be open for promotions. The reason why people complain today about why like these women that passed over for promotional roles is because there's a risk that they might not be there. They might have a pregnancy leave and such, and you need leadership roles to be present at all times. You can't just basically disappear if you're in a leadership role for 4, 5, 6 months at a time. So yeah, that would be productive for the advancement of women's career too, as well.
Yeah, and just to briefly circle back with what you were talking about with the guns, well, the whole thing with concealed carry is like, take for example someone like Trump. I heard rumors a while back that he donated $1 million to the NYPD to even be approved for concealed carry. And that was years ago. So the whole process with concealed carry in New York is completely fucking backwards.
To be the case, and New York has one of the strictest. Uh, they have some of the strictest gun laws in the country. And but the thing is, most of these gun laws, they don't even make sense. You have like rules where they have certain guns, and this is why guns are more expensive than others. You could basically have a bazooka from because it was basically developed before a certain time frame. So there's like bazookas that go for like $10 million, and there's like these rich people that have bazookas because it's fucking before a certain year, so they're allowed to have them. So they just trade the bazooka between one another, and you
Yeah,
have
I
all
think
these
it's
women.
I think it's called the Assault Weapons Act or something like that, where it's like as long as it's before a certain date, you could legally own it. I think it's like the same thing with tanks and shit too. Like you could buy like a decommissioned like Sherman fucking tank or whatever from like World War II. It's like pretty crazy shit.
Exactly, that's why it doesn't make any sense. So you got rules like that where there's like loopholes and such, and then people, they don't even allow regular people to have a handgun, a concealed handgun. They don't want people having a concealed handgun in New York City. I think you needed to have like a reason to have a concealed handgun. They wanted you to say like, oh, I'm a jeweler and I'm carrying around expensive merchandise or so. They wanted you to provide them a reason for basically using your Second Amendment. You had to have some kind of reason why you needed the gun, which is nonsense.
Yeah, which is obviously unconstitutional, but the fact that you could easily, it's actually easier to get a rifle or shotgun permit in New York City than a handgun, like concealed carry, is pretty fucking ridiculous. Like, that's so stupid. Like, it's literally easier for you to get a to get a rifle permit or a shotgun permit than a handgun. That's fucking insane. That's like literally the dumbest thing ever. Like, you could cause, when you think about weapons, like, there are a lot more problems that someone could cause with a shotgun or rifle than a fucking handgun. Like, when you really think about it. So that's really scary that they're so backwards in their thinking that they don't look at things from that perspective and from that lens.
Yeah, they also extended. I think they extended recently red flag laws. See that?
No, I didn't see that. What was going on with that?
They're opening up basically juvenile records in like background checks for red flag laws, and they're doing a couple other things because of these mass shootings. So they're basically trying to uh, petitioning the courts to basically expand these red flag laws.
Wow, that's really interesting. Yeah, that whole
Yeah,
thing, there's a huge problem with that where there are people who are younger who are like, I don't know, it's like certain areas of the country, I guess, where they're able to get access to like weapons and stuff like that, like pretty easily, or I mean, really not easily, but they're kind of like, they'll go through like a waiting period and a background check period, and if they don't have like any sort of like criminal record, then like it's tough to tell that someone's gonna be able to buy a weapon and then do something like that. So it's just really odd, and like I think some people are like actual sociopaths in a sense that like even if they took like some type of psychological like background test, no matter how stringent it is, I think they would figure out a way to like manipulate their results and just kind of cheat the system. So it's like, where do you kind of draw the line there? That's what I'm like really wondering about lately.
yeah. I think these red flag laws. I think they're dangerous. You're taking away an American's rights, and you didn't do anything wrong. You're basically assuming they're going to do something wrong based off of your own suspicion and your own suspicion uh, by itself. That's dangerous. You're taking away somebody's rights because you think it's the right thing to do, and you're predicting that the guy's violent. Meanwhile, he's not even violent, and it's dangerous when it comes to domestic disputes issues as well. You have basically these partners that they make false reports towards their wife, that their wife's attacking them and such, so that they can abuse their wife more and more, and then they stop her from getting a gun and protecting herself and doing that such. And I think these red flag laws are, they're grossly unconstitutional. They should be gotten rid of. If you didn't do anything wrong, then you shouldn't have your right to have a gun taken away out of someone else's fear because they're emotional and they're afraid that you're going to go shoot up a school and such. There should be clear and concise evidence for basically taking away someone's right to bear arms.
Yeah, and you mentioned about that whole thing about possibly kind of like preventing someone from doing something before they actually do it. That just reminds me of like that movie Minority Report. I don't know if you've seen that. It's from like the early 2000s. It's with it was a Spielberg film, but it had like Tom Cruise in there and like a bunch of other people. And the whole premise is like it takes place in the future and police use like this technology to arrest people and like to convict people before they even like commit the crimes. It's really weird. It just reminded me of that. I don't know why. It's like super Orwellian, and I could totally see society, especially Western society, getting to a point where that could become a thing if people push for more of these like draconian measures and like blatant privacy violations and blatant like data collection too. Like I could totally see that happening.
You think when Assange gets extradited, you think he's going to be allowed to carry a gun?
Oh, absolutely not. No shot. Yeah, his whole situation's fucked too, because that guy, like, when you look at what WikiLeaks did, he really got in trouble with. It was like the vault leak. that you were telling me about offline? Is that what it was? Or it was like Vault 7 or something like that where he really got in trouble?
Yeah, Bolt 7. Yeah, I think.
That was like the biggest thing. That's where like that was kind of the impetus for the government really fucking coming after him, right? Because that was all stuff that got leaked that the government was doing that they weren't supposed to be fucking doing. That was like actually putting the lives of Americans and just civilians in danger. So that was a big problem that he leaked. But the whole thing with him is that he's not really the whistleblower in these situations. He's just sort of like the publisher of information. So the people who are the actual whistleblowers, like Snowden and Manning, and a few of these other people, like those are legitimate whistleblowers. He's almost just like an aggregator. Like these people, they could have posted shit on Twitter or Facebook, right, or leaked it on there. And do you hold Facebook or Twitter accountable for allowing people to post shit on there? No. So it's
Well, I
kind of like
mean,
you could make the same argument with Assange a little bit because the whole thing was like he wasn't really doing the legwork. Like he didn't hack into anything. He didn't get a hold of like a lot of these documents by like going directly to the government, but it was like people were kind of giving shit to him that they took, and then he was just reposting it. So he was really just like an aggregator for like the leaked documents, and then that's why they went after him.
yeah, that's a good tangential point there. But if he was on Facebook or Twitter and such, they could have just easily taken it down. That's why they don't. That's why they wouldn't. They care about this guy and they want to get rid of him is because they didn't have the power to take it down. They didn't have control like they do with
Of
Facebook and
course.
Twitter.
But my juxtaposition is that I bring up Facebook and Twitter in a sense that if these people posted, if Snowden posted all the leaks about the prison program and all these other programs that were being done, and if he posted them to Facebook and Facebook didn't take them down, would the government go after Facebook? And do they have a right to go after Facebook, even though the guy is using that as the platform and they're really not responsible for like what he put up?
No, I don't think he should be responsible for. He's a journalist. He should be reporting on everything and putting. If he gets the evidence, he should be reporting on it.
Yeah, I mean yeah, that's the whole thing is like he's just an aggregator. There are like plenty of news sites that people go on. Some of it is like not really mainstream news, and it'll mostly just be like an aggregation of like what journalists put up. Like that's what a news publisher does, and that's what a lot of like grassroots campaigns do. And they'll repost articles from different authors that are like not really affiliated with them, but like they know that that person's very credible. So then they'll repost the article. So that's really what Assange was doing is just reposting shit. It's like he built a platform where he couldn't be censored, and it's like he's just retweeting shit that other people are doing, and then that's it. It's not like he's actually engaging in illegal acts. He's just reposting things that were like illegal or illegally obtained, I should say.
Yeah, that's quite the circumlocution circumlocution there. But um, what do you think about like if you look at Julian Assange, right? Do you think he or Snowden is more guilty in the situation? And if so, or neither, which one would you put as more guilty?
Do you hear anything in the background coming from my mic or no?
No.
Okay, all right, cool. I would say that Snowden is more guilty, and the reason being is that he actually mishandled like classified information that he leaked out to the public. So there were things that the government, even though like he leaked the prison program and a bunch of other things, the problem is that he actually mishandled some of the information, and he didn't redact certain information that put people at risk that actually work for like the CIA and the NSA. So even though those people were doing things that they weren't supposed to be doing, their personal information shouldn't have been at risk. Like he should have had like the mental wherewithal to be able to like strike their names from the documents and to be able to strike information out from these documents that is impertinent to what the general public at large should know. So yeah, I would say that Snowden is more guilty.
Nah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Like
Um,
Assange was given dozens of documents, but he only posted. If you actually went on WikiLeaks and you look at like their postings and how many different ones that they had, he only had like 10 real like postings and like official leaks. But obviously there are hundreds of emails, thousands of documents that fall within each each of these like 8 or 10 leaks. But the whole thing is that he was given a lot more information, but he only reposted things that he felt were like pertinent for the general public to know, and not so much, anything else. So like his whole thing is like if he posted about the prison program or whatever, he would only post shit that was like pertinent to that. But in Snowden's case, like when he went to go leak some documents, it got kind of weird because he leaked it to Glenn Greenwald, who's a reporter and who's a mainstream reporter for The Guardian. And the whole thing with Glenn Greenwald is like obviously he doesn't have security clearance and he's not in the know enough to kind of figure out what to redact and what not to. He's just a publisher of information. So he's not really like briefed on what needs to be stricken from these documents and what shouldn't. So
yeah, I think so you got Assange, you got Snowden. I think basically I think Snowden would be umbrage at your remarks there that he's more guilty than Assange.
yeah, and then the whole thing is that Russia granted him asylum, so we really don't know if he actually handed over any information to the Russians in exchange for asylum. I mean, it's not like Russia's just protecting him out of the kindness of their heart. I mean, I really wouldn't think that's the case, right?
Yeah, why not? I mean, they wouldn't want to hand somebody over to the Americans. That's simple as that. They don't want to hand somebody over. You're just doing it to be you know, combative.
Well, if I was Putin and I was Russia, I would say, "Hey, we'll grant you asylum, but like you got to turn over some of the fucking documents to us." And then if he didn't, then I would just drag him into the fucking gulag, and then that'd be it, and you'd never hear from him again.
I don't think. I just think he doesn't want to give them to the Americans. He doesn't want the Americans to have a win, so he just keeps them there. What happened with Ford? Your big Ford vehicles. You're a Ford lover.
Oh, I hate Ford. I can't fucking stand them. So Ford, the whole thing was that first of all, they ruined the Mustang. I don't know if you saw this, but they made the Mustang electric. Big fucking problem right there. That's number one. You make an electric car, you make a brand new car, new branding, new name, new everything, right? Big mistake. So Ford came out with this. It was like a Mustang crossover, right? So it's an SUV and it's an electric SUV and it's called the Mach E. And you might have seen these on the road. I've seen them. And the reason I want to bring this up is because it's important to mention this for two reasons. Obviously, Ford's going to be hit pretty hard financially, and that's the main reason this ties in. And number two, just the public at large, like in terms of general safety, it's important for me to bring this up because of the problems that they're having. So from May of 2020 to current date, they made about 100,000 Ford Mach E's that were released to the public and sold, right? So in that case, that means that there were 49,000 Ford Mach E's that were recalled. So basically, half of all the cars on the road were recalled. So most people would go, "Oh, well, what's the recall like? That might not be a big deal." Well, the recall is that the power for the car, power output for steering and for gas and for braking would just shut off randomly when people were fucking driving and the vehicle was in motion. So if you see these cars on the road, you have to be really careful because I've seen them on the road. They're not super common. It's more of like one of those fucking like a novelty, I guess, for a lot of people to buy these cars. But Ford cannot they're not good at making like electric cars. It's like a known thing. And Chevy's not very good at making electric cars either. There's a reason Tesla is like head and shoulders above the competition in that space because they're battling with like traditional car manufacturers that don't have an understanding of like how to design electric cars. Like the Chevy Bolt is a shitty fucking electric car. Like it's not a good car. The closest competitor I would say right now, honestly, is probably like certain hybrids. The Toyota Prius is a great hybrid. Like it's literally probably I honestly I would say in terms of fuel efficiency and safety, it's probably the best hybrid car in the market. Like it's not even close. But think about how long Toyota has had the Prius. I mean, at this point, it's been over a decade. They've kind of mastered the engineering. That car's about as good as it's going to get. Like, you could easily get like 35 to 40 miles per gallon with that fucking thing. That thing's a beast. And, that's obviously a hybrid, so a different niche than an electric car. But the Ford Mach E is just the engineering sucks. The body design of the car sucks. They're having major, like I said, power output issues that's just shutting off all power in the car, steering, braking, acceleration. The car is basically just like a brick at that point, and it's affect basically half of all the cars that they produced of this model in the last like 2 years. So like Ford, like what are you doing? It's amazing. It fucking behooves me that they're even gonna make more of this car because they clearly didn't fucking beta test this and safety test this as much as they should have. Like clearly it was fucking rushed out, and people don't understand that.
Well, you know what it is with Ford. They have all these meetings, all these team meetings where they discuss various different things, and these meetings they're just boondoggles. They're totally useless. They're totally unproductive. And then you have Tesla where they say you only show up to a meeting if you're needed at the meeting, and you think it's the most productive use of your time. You don't just show up to a meeting to basically discuss nonsense, and if you're not providing to the meeting, you're not providing any new insight, then you basically leave the meeting and you do something else. So they have all these useless meetings, and they're not developing the best car that they can because they got all their engineers wasting time in these meetings instead of basically looking for ways to improve their cars.
Yeah, and that's that whole thing. And I kind of spoke about this a while back. There's this book, and it's really a good book. Some parts of the book get like a little preachy with the author, like with what he says. But the premise is that it is this book by David Graeber, and it's called Bullshit Jobs. And the whole point of it is like there are these like stupid jobs that exist that they basically are like pencil pushing jobs, like bullshit fucking jobs that shouldn't exist at all to begin with. And it's mostly like HR people and like fucking middle managers that don't do anything, but they like kind of manage the people who are at like the lower end tier of like that corporate hierarchy or whatever. And basically it's just the whole premise that people are just meeting and they're not doing anything, and they only have like a couple of hours a day of like actual productivity, and the things that they do could like easily be automated. But companies don't see things that way because they look at like just building up like a crazy company with like tens of thousands of employees or however many people, to the point where there's like a ton of redundancies within these corporations, and like you have people who have jobs where they literally do nothing, but they like convince themselves and everyone else around them that they do a lot, and then they never get like let go of. And it's like this weird game that's being played that people don't understand. Like it's one thing if you don't have too much to do because you built productive systems and like productive automated strategies for like taking care of your workflow and like processing everything. And then it's another thing to just have like a job or like to do, you know, like a task every once in a while, and then you're just sitting there in your free time doing nothing. So I think that there's a lot of these companies that kind of struggle with this, and I think Tesla does a good job at like combating that, and Apple as well, and a few of these other big companies, particularly in the tech space, like they kind of get it. You have to just be results oriented, and you definitely don't want to just have meetings to have meetings, or have a fucking your favorite Zoom call, just to have a fucking Zoom call. It's just so
Zoom, zoom.
silly, and it's an unproductive way to spend your time. And I implore people, if they're on any of these bullshit ass fucking calls and they don't have to have the camera on, just like have the call up in the background and work on something else that's more productive and a better
Yeah,
measure of your time.
you're talking in a circumlocution. It's basically a boondoggle.
What did you
It's a
say?
boom.
A circle locution? A what?
I said you're talking in a circumlocution. It's basically a boondoggle.
All right. So what does that mean? You know, enlighten the
That
general
mean
public here and myself.
that means you're talking using too many words when less would suffice, right? You just call it a boondoggle. A boondoggle is basically it's people acting like they're being useful, but they're really not being useful. They're doing nonsense stuff. So like I said before the team meeting, they think it's a useful meeting, but honestly it's useless.
I agree. Everyone go read Bullshit Jobs by David Graeber. But just ignore the part where he gets really preachy towards the end of the book because he's retarded and he doesn't have an understanding of like the macroeconomic system. So, but he gets the point that these companies have redundancies and they have too many, and it's a huge waste of time and it's such a fucking big problem, dude. And the other thing too, speaking of redundancies and on the same topic of tech, TikTok is fucking booming, baby. TikTok is on pace to triple their revenue this year, and now people are kind of starting to see them as a threat to Facebook. So, by the way, go follow us on fucking TikTok too. We have a TikTok. It's at Anonymous Investors on TikTok. We've been posting on there pretty regularly. I'm trying to make it a point to post on there every day. Our numbers on TikTok are better than fucking YouTube and Spotify and all these other things. So it just shows you how that platform has been growing and how many people are using it pretty regularly. But I would say that people definitely need to take TikTok more fucking seriously. What do you think about that?
I mean, I don't know if I would say that. I don't think I would take TikTok too seriously. I mean, it's not monetizable. Maybe it's good for brand awareness and such, but you can't monetize it. You get about one petahash, basically, of a penny per fucking 1,000 views on
The
TikTok.
yeah,
It's
the
one of
CPM is pretty bad. It's like if you have like a million views on a TikTok video, it's like equivalent to making like $20 right now. It's fucking garbage, the CPM. Like legitimately bad. But it's good for traffic. Like the thing is that you could use I feel like you could use it as a landing platform and you could have people go to your fucking TikTok and then from there you could link your YouTube channel to your TikTok. So when they click on your profile, then they click another button and they're brought to the YouTube app. Like there's like cross-platform integration kind of built in where you could easily bounce from one platform to another without having to like, leave the app, go on Safari or go on whatever web browser to then go on YouTube to then look the person's name up. Like you don't have to do that. So I think that's where they're going to win. And to me, there are a lot of eyeballs on there because a lot of younger people use it and everything, like the way the content is supposed to be designed. It's like a more intuitive form of like Vine. Like that's kind of how I look at it because Vine was only like, what, 7 seconds or some shit back in the day. But it was like, it was more like comedy skits and shit like that. Like people on TikTok, they do a lot more than that. Like there are actually like finance, there are like niches on there. Like there are people that talk about real estate investing on there. There are people that talk about stock market, like investing, like, investing in equities. There are people that talk about crypto investing. Like there are people that talk about like fucking knitting and shit on there. Like it's really weird how there are so many different niches. And I think it's a good way to get eyeballs on like whatever you're making. And then from there, what you could do is you could kind of drive traffic to the other platforms. And I think that's where the value lies in it. I don't think it'll ever, at least at this stage of the game, I don't think it will be valuable in terms of like CPM and stuff like that. Cause like I said, for every million, you only get like $20 or some shit. Like you're not making any money. I would think the main thing is that on the views that you have, you could use that as a proof of concept to then go to like Dunkin' Donuts or fucking, I don't know, Starbucks or whatever fucking company. Maybe you go to T-Mobile or wherever, and then you go, "Hey, I have a million people that view my shit all the time. Like, you want to pay me, and we'll do a brand deal." I think that's where you're going to be able to do pretty good with it. But in terms of like CPM and the platform itself being used as a way to monetize, I don't think we're there yet. I think it could get to a point, but I don't think it's there yet.
Yeah, I think the only way you make money on TikTok is through brand deals and sponsorships because their TikTok monetization program is no bueno. But yeah, you got to basically convert your traffic to another platform. YouTube is and always will be the best platform for monetizing your content by far. There's no other platform that even comes close, except maybe the platforms where you charge per user. But those you kind of basically forming your own platform. That's not really a platform where they drive traffic for you.
Yeah, and what would be like an example of something like that where it's like they charge for user? Are you talking about like your own platform where like you set up like a subscription service, almost kind of like a Patreon type of thing, but you
Yeah,
don't really have to pay
Patreon,
them to cut?
or like, not even a Patreon. Say, let's say like a Maverick Club, like that's your basically
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
your own platform. Patreon, like platforms like that. OnlyFans, basically.
Yeah. That makes sense. And speaking of platforms and stuff like that, I mean, we did talk a little bit about crypto, but there's been some funny stuff that's been going on with, your buddy. I know you were really good friends with this guy back in the day, the farmer bro, Martin Shkreli or whatever, Shkreli as I call him. I'm kidding, it's Shkreli, but Shkreli, that's a funny name because I think of Shrek. But the whole thing is that he recently got out of prison, and he says that he was using Uniswap in prison, and Hayden Adams is like the creator of Uniswap, and he was like beefing with him, and he was like, "Oh, well, he understand that I listened to the Wu-Tang album. He bought more recently than him," and he was like kind of going back and forth with him. But Shkreli kind of like changed his tune because for the longest time, when he was kind of doing those live streams or whatever in his apartment in Manhattan, he was like shitting on Bitcoin when people would call in. And now he's singing a different tune. So he recently kind of came out and said to Decrypt, he says that he sees major potential for the use of blockchain and decentralized computing in the pharmaceutical industry and is now working on a software product in that area. So now it's interesting. He actually came out and he says that he owns, in quotes, a smattering of different coins that are tied to some physical reality or financial reality. So anything stable or asset backed is exciting to me. And he says he's very bullish on stable coins, but not algorithmic stable coins. And he says, I think stable coins have been proven probably more than Bitcoin and Ethereum. And he also owns NFTs, but he says that it's more of a joke and he doesn't see any actual intrinsic value. And he doesn't buy them for financial reasons, but more social and humorous reasons. So it's crazy to see that he kind of got into the space because he's isn't he barred from the securities industry and the financial industry forever? So it's like now he's going into crypto. But do you think that his bid into crypto is legitimate, or do you think it's kind of a cash grab? Because obviously, like I said, at one point he was such an outspoken critic of crypto and that whole space, and he kind of chalked it up as bullshit back in the day.
I mean, he's kind of out of options, so you got to think about like can't be in the pharmaceutical industry. He was banned from that. He can't be in the finance industry. He was banned from that. Those are two industries where that's his whole career. His whole career was in one of those two industries. So he's looking for somewhere else to go where he can make money and get back on his feet. So yeah, he'd be more willing to basically accept that since he has nothing else that he can do and he can work towards. So he'd be more willing to basically accept the crypto industry in the predicament that he's in, since he was basically barred from two industries. So a person being barred from an industry, they would be more willing to accept crypto because in the crypto economy, you can't just ban somebody from an industry. They would basically still have control of the money and control of their funds, and they can't be controlled by a central bank. So he basically would still be able to participate in these industries if it was for the crypto economy. So I think this opened up his eyes to basically, crypto. Him being
Yeah, I
banned
mean
opened up
there are no barriers to entry. There's no really barring anyone from that space if you wanted to like create a project and enter there. That's one of the great things about that space, and I guess it is also a double-edged sword, but the main thing is that, it's probably the freest market that's out there right now, and a lot of people don't realize that, but it really is like the truest form of laissez-faire capitalism on like a pretty big level, because when you look at stocks and you look at real estate and all these other different things, there are some shenanigans at play for sure, and there are for crypto as well. But the main thing is that, like, if you create a really good crypto product or software that people want, the demand is there, people will use it. If you create an algorithmic stable coin like Terra Luna and it turns out that it's a piece of shit, it's going to implode, and the self-correcting market will once again correct itself again. Like that's what people don't, get about that whole space, is that it's a beautiful thing. Like the really, and Buffett talks about this a little bit with equities. He says that money flows from the people who are impatient to the people who are patient, and the people who are patient end up making, the lion's share of money. And that's kind of the same thing with crypto. Like all the companies that are still going to be around are all the companies that kind of played the long game here. Like Coinbase played the long game. BlockFi didn't really play the long game. That's why they cut 25% of their workforce. And
Who played the
you
long
mentioned,
game?
I would say Coinbase played the long game for sure.
No, after that, who'd you say after that?
Well, I said BlockFi didn't play the long game
Oh,
because they cut 25% of their workforce. They were way too aggressive in trying to grow. They had huge issues where they paid out Bitcoin to people for staking, and they mistakenly gave people like millions of dollars in their individual accounts in Bitcoin. Do you remember that? And then the other thing is that they had to be bailed out by Sam Bankman-Fried of FTX and a bunch of other people. And like I think Binance is playing the short game. Binance is still hiring through the crypto winter, which is I don't even know how that's possible. How are they hiring through a crypto winter where literally even Coinbase is basically not hiring people and they actually rescinded all the job offers they sent out?
well,
So
this
how
is
the
what
fuck
they
does that
said.
happen?
They said they're able to hire through the winter because they were very, they cared about their balance sheet. They didn't do these Super Bowl ads that everybody else was doing, and they didn't waste money on advertising and such. But yeah, Sam Bankman-Fried, he didn't just bail out these platforms out of the kindness of his heart. He gave 250 million to BlockFi. He gave 500 million to Voyager, and he did this because this hedge fund, this crypto hedge fund, Three Arrows Capital, they got margin called and they lost basically
Six
massive.
hundred and 61 million. That was the
Right,
number.
exactly. Six hundred and
Crazy.
sixty-one million. No, I think it was $666 million that they lost. And yeah, they basically, he had to basically be the central bank, and he had to bail out these platforms so that there wasn't a Lehman Brothers type of ramification throughout the entire crypto market. Because if you think about it, all of these brokerages, they loan money to each other. They're basically cross collateralized with their Bitcoin and their stable coins and such. So he basically bailed them out to protect his own ass and to protect FTX from collapsing. All you need is one of these crypto brokerages to go down, and you're going to see a massive, 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 massive Lehman type Brothers event throughout the whole entire industry. If one of these exchanges collapse, it's going to basically, there's going to be massive ramifications, and it's very dangerous. That's why we need regulation to prevent these contagions from spreading.
I think another thing with him too, particularly Sam Bankman-Fried, is that he almost kind of pulled like a Buffett move. Like that's something that Buffett did back in the day. A lot of people forget about that. There was that whole situation, I believe, with Bank of America and Goldman Sachs, where he kind of bankrolled them during that whole 2007, 2008 financial crisis, where he kind of floated them money and then they were able to stay afloat. And he got like a crazy amount of interest. I think Goldman was like the most prominent example of that, right? How much did he get an interest on the Goldman situation? I remember that was pretty big too. But most people were like very quiet about that, or like they either didn't know about it, or it was kind of like a real like weird situation.
Yeah, what did he bail out? Bank of America, Goldman, and Wells Fargo. I think he bailed out like at least three or four banks. He got like a bank. I think he bought Bank of America. He got like
I,
preferred
I
shares that were at
just
like six
found
bucks or some
I
shit.
just found a good article on this. So the article says Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway raked in more than 3 billion from its Goldman Sachs bailout. This is as of May 2020. So I'm sure it's a lot more. So he received a $500 million premium for preferred. Oh, here you go. Okay, so he spent $5 billion to bail out Goldman Sachs in 2008, and he made more than 3 billion in profit. So that's pretty awesome. And he also went as to say it. It's been pointing out that our preferred is paying us $15 a second. So as we sit here, tick 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 tick, that's $15 every second. That's pretty awesome. So here was the move. Here's what happened. So they say the famed investors company handled handed the funds to the investment bank in 2008 at the height of the financial crisis. In exchange, it received $5 billion in preferred stock, paying a 10% annual dividend, as well as warrants enabling it to buy 43.5 million of Goldman's common shares at $115 each at any point in the ensuing 5 years. Wow. So they mentioned warrants here. A lot of people might not know about that. So there's stock rights and then there are warrants. So warrants are different in a sense that warrants are basically like an option to buy shares in a company at a premium relative to market value. Whereas stock rights kind of enable you to retain ownership and proportional ownership in the event of like a new share issue where you would potentially be diluted. So most people don't know that. That's the difference between stock rights and warrants. So that's worth mentioning. Um, yeah, but he says that every day that goes by that Goldman does not call our preferred is money in the bank. He said, referring to Goldman's having to pay Berkshire a 500 million yearly dividend until it bought back the company's shares. So that's pretty incredible. I mean, you're getting a 10% dividend a year. That's fucking insanity. Literally insanity. And Goldman, it's kind of funny that they took a deal like that. Obviously, they had to, but it's just funny how a company that literally would exist to like fuck people over ended up getting fucked over by Buffett like that. I just find that pretty ironic.
That's how it goes. What comes around goes around.
Yeah,
I think he recently
it's just a case of someone with more money just
position.
burying someone else. What's up?
I think he recently sold off his position. He was getting rid of a lot of the banks.
I believe that he sold off Wells Fargo aggressively too. I think he's kind of done with Wells Fargo because of all the scandals. Like we spoke about a bunch of them, but there are all these crazy scandals with Wells, and it's just a culture thing, dude. It really is. You know, I don't. I mean, I can't fathom it. It's kind of crazy that Wells is still dealing with like a lot of these culture issues, and they keep changing management, and leadership, and it just really doesn't make any sense. Like, there's a lot of managers that you know got exposed by people who came forward as whistleblowers, and there are people who are retired that came out and fucking trashed the company, and they're in like a world of hurt. And I think that most people, not even just Americans, but most people globally really don't like them. Then there are all like the documentaries that are being made about them, and a lot of other banks in particular, like Goldman. And there's a really good Goldman documentary called, it's like Goldman Sachs, the bank that runs the world, or something like that. And it was on Netflix, and I saw it like years ago, and that was really good. And then there's that Dirty Money episode on Wells Fargo where they just flat out fucking buried Wells Fargo, and it's pretty funny to watch. But people really don't like fucking banks, and I totally get it. And a lot of these like really old school traditional brick and mortar banks, and some of these other banks are just up to no good, and I think at some point they'll be gone, and or they won't have as much of a large presence as they have now, and people will be done with them, and then that'll be it. Because if you can't trust who you're depositing money with, then who the fuck can you trust? I mean, it just really comes down to that. You got to protect your fucking geeters. You got to protect your ass. And on that note, thanks for coming through. It's been a good time. Do you have any words of wisdom that you want to share with the people, the townspeople, the common man, the common everyday man who's just, commuting in, and he's looking for wisdom from the COVID-free investment sage himself, God?
Subscribe.
Yeah, I agree. Follow on TikTok as well, at Anonymous Investors. We're really kind of pushing that hard lately. Thanks again. Motherfucker. Thanks again, motherfucker. Now we play the outro.